All right, strap in, everyone. Today we're taking a deep dive into the wild world of Theranos. Thanks to Bad Blood, the incredible book by John Carreyrou. This story, well, it goes way beyond just a failed startup. It's about ambition, deception, and the dark side of Silicon Valley's famous move fast and break things motto.
You hit the nail on the head. The rise and fall of Theranos, it really captures that tension between groundbreaking innovation and that human tendency we all have to believe a good story, sometimes maybe a little too easily.
Right, and the story they sold was pretty convincing. Just imagine a world where hundreds of blood tests could be done with just one tiny drop. All thanks to this revolutionary device, they called it the Edison. It was promising faster, cheaper, easier access to diagnostics for everyone. It would have been a total game changer in healthcare if it had worked.
Oh, absolutely. If that technology had actually done what they claimed, it would have been revolutionary, a truly groundbreaking moment. Think about the impact. Early disease detection, personalized medicine. It would have been a complete shift in how we approach healthcare. It's no wonder it caught the attention of investors, politicians, even top military strategists like James Mattis. He even joined their board.
It seemed like everyone was on board with Elizabeth Holmes's vision. And she was quite a compelling figure, you have to admit. This Stanford dropout, inspired by Steve Jobs, she built this persona, this image of a visionary genius. Black turtleneck, deep voice. And that unwavering belief in her mission, it was all part of it.
Well, looking back now, it's easy to say she was playing a part. But you have to remember, Silicon Valley runs on those big ideas, on those charismatic leaders. It's a culture that often rewards, boldness over caution. And Holmes, well, she mastered that game. She knew how to use her image and her story, especially when she was pitching complex technology to investors who, let's be honest, may not have fully grasped the science behind it.
So how did she manage to pull it off? To convince all those high-profile investors? Were they just, blinded by her charisma, or was there more to it?
Well, charisma definitely played a part. I wouldn't deny that.
Yeah.
But let's not forget the power dynamics at play here. Holmes wasn't just pitching an idea. She was promising a future where healthcare was accessible to everyone. And that vision, well, it resonated with a lot of people. When you combine that kind of compelling narrative with a carefully crafted image and endorsements from powerful figures, it creates a strong sense of legitimacy. It's hard to resist.
So she was tapping into a specific kind of Silicon Valley optimism, that belief that technology can solve any problem.
Exactly. And to be fair, that optimism, that faith in disruption, it fuels a lot of innovation in tech. But the Theranos story shows us the downside. It can also create those blind spots.
So let's talk about the technology itself. What was it about the Edison that seemed so revolutionary, at least on the surface?
Well, the Edison claimed to use microfluidics, which is basically a way to manipulate tiny amounts of fluids. And they said it could run hundreds of blood tests using just a finger prick. A radical shift from traditional methods that require vials of blood and a lot of processing time. If it had worked, it could have made blood testing as easy as, checking your blood pressure at home.
But we know now that the reality was, well, far from what they promised.
Yeah, the technology just couldn't deliver. Theranos engineers struggled to make the Edison work reliably, and the results they did get were often inaccurate.
And that's where the cracks start to show, right? How did Holmes react to these problems, to the fact that the technology wasn't working as advertised?
Well, instead of admitting the limitations, she doubled down. She pressured her team to manipulate data, to run tests on modified commercial machines, essentially creating a smokescreen to hide the truth from investors and the public.
That's incredible. It's like she was running a movie set, not a legitimate biotech company. How did she get away with it for so long?
Well, there are a few factors at play. Holmes fostered a culture of fear and secrecy at Theranos. Employees were terrified to speak up, and those who did were often threatened or silenced.
So she maintained this illusion through intimidation and control.
Exactly. She created an environment where loyalty and silence were valued above all else. And that's dangerous anywhere, but especially in a company dealing with healthcare.
Speaking of the risks, let's not forget about the patients. They were making medical decisions based on results from a machine that was basically built on lies.
And that's where the story gets even darker. Carreyrou's book goes into detail about cases where people received inaccurate results from Theranos tests, leading to misdiagnoses, unnecessary treatments, and a lot of emotional distress. It goes beyond corporate greed at that point. It becomes a matter of potentially endangering people's lives.
It's hard to believe something like this could happen.
Well, Theranos was able to fly under the radar for a while. They were very careful about who they partnered with and how they presented their technology. They even avoided traditional regulatory pathways, which shielded them from scrutiny.
So they were cutting corners and putting profits before people.
I think that's a fair assessment. It raises a lot of questions about accountability and the ethical responsibilities of companies in healthcare.
Hmm.
But maybe we should save that discussion for later after we explore how this whole scheme unraveled.
Good point. So stay with us because in the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore how Theranos' web of lies started to fall apart. Thanks to a few brave whistleblowers and the persistence of a certain Wall Street Journal reporter, it's really mind-boggling how Theranos managed to fool so many people for so long. But, like all empires built on lies, it eventually had to come crashing down. So how did this house of cards finally fall apart?
Well, it all started with a few brave people. People who were willing to risk everything, their careers, their reputations, to expose the truth. People like Tyler Schultz, the grandson of a Theranos board member. He saw firsthand the huge gap between what the company was claiming and what was actually happening.
It must have been incredibly tough for him to come forward, knowing the potential backlash from his own family, from all those powerful figures involved.
Oh, absolutely. Whistleblowing is never easy, especially when you're going up against a company like Theranos with all their resources and their aggressive legal team. But Schultz felt he had to speak out. He knew that people's health and well-being were at stake.
And thank goodness he did. His actions and the actions of other whistleblowers were crucial in bringing the truth to light. But it wasn't just internal dissent that brought Theranos down. It was also the relentless work of investigative journalist John Carreyrou.
Carreyrou's role in this story is amazing. He got a tip from a pathologist who was skeptical of Theranos' claims, and he just wouldn't let it go. He faced legal threats, intimidation, all sorts of obstacles. But he kept digging, driven by this commitment to uncover the truth.
A true testament to the power of good journalism, holding the powerful accountable even when they try to silence dissent.
Exactly. Carreyrou's investigation for the Wall Street Journal was a masterpiece of investigative journalism. He meticulously pieced together the whole story, interviewing former employees, analyzing documents, and exposing the lies behind Theranos' technology.
And when his expose was finally published in 2015, it was like a bomb went off.
It was a turning point. Carreyrou's reporting triggered a whole chain of events. Regulatory investigations, lawsuits, investor panic. The carefully crafted image that Holmes had built, it all started to crumble.
So it was pretty much a rapid downfall for Theranos from that point on.
Pretty much. Once the cracks were exposed, it was only a matter of time. Regulators, who had been pretty hands-off before, started taking a much closer look. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services launched an investigation, and they ended up revoking Theranos' lab license, which was a fatal blow to the company.
It's amazing how quickly public opinion can change. One minute, Holmes is a visionary genius on magazine covers. The next, she's facing criminal charges.
It shows how fragile reputations can be, especially in today's world of social media and 2047 news. But beyond the reputational damage, the legal consequences were huge.
Right. In 2018, Holmes and her former business partner, Ramesh Sunny Balwani, were indicted on multiple counts of fraud. They were accused of defrauding investors and patients, and the case became a massive legal battle.
The trial itself was a media circus, with Holmes taking the stand in her own defense, trying to paint herself as a naive idealist who had been misled. But in the end, the jury found her guilty on 4 counts of fraud and conspiracy. She was sentenced to over 11 years in prison.
Wow. From Silicon Valley star to convicted felon, what a dramatic fall from grace.
It is, and I think it raises some big questions about ambition, accountability, and the ethics of innovation. The Theranos story isn't just about a failed company. It's a warning about the dangers of unchecked ambition and putting profit over people.
It's also a reminder that we need to be critical thinkers, to be skeptical, especially when we hear groundbreaking claims. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of a big idea, but we need to be more discerning, to ask tough questions and demand evidence.
Absolutely. We can't just blindly believe the hype. We need to be more informed, more involved, and hold those in power accountable.
So where do we go from here? What are the lasting effects of the Theranos scandal, and what lessons can we learn from this whole mess?
That's a question that deserves its own deep dive. But before we wrap up, I think we should acknowledge the people who played a key role in bringing down Theranos.
You mean the whistleblowers and journalists who refused to stay silent?
Exactly. People like Tyler Schultz, Erica Chung, and Adam Rosendorf, who risked their careers to tell the truth. And of course, John Carreyrou, whose reporting brought the story to the world.
They're the real heroes of this story. The ones who stood up for what was right, even when it was difficult and risky.
Their actions remind us how important it is to speak truth to power, even when facing powerful forces that want to keep their secrets hidden.
Their courage is truly inspiring. It shows that individuals can make a difference, even when the odds seem stacked against them.
And it highlights the importance of a free press and investigative journalism. They're essential for holding those in power accountable.
So as we move forward, let's remember their example and work towards a culture where whistleblowing is encouraged and protected, and where journalists are free to do their jobs without fear.
Because ultimately, transparency, accountability, and ethical behavior are crucial for building a society where innovation truly benefits everyone.
Well said. I think that's a perfect transition to the final part of our deep dive. So we've talked about the rise and fall of Theranos, but I'm curious, did anything really change after this massive scandal? Did Silicon Valley actually learn a lesson, or is it still all about that fake it till you make it mindset?
That's the million-dollar question, and to be honest, it's tough to say for sure. On the one hand, Theranos definitely shook things up in Silicon Valley. There was a lot of reflection, at least for a while. Investors got a bit more cautious. Due diligence became more rigorous. There was more talk about ethics and tech innovation.
So it sounds like some people were taking notice and maybe reevaluating their priorities.
Yeah, but it's hard to know how deep those changes really went. Silicon Valley has a short memory. It's all about disruption, pushing boundaries, sometimes even bending the rules to reach those big goals.
So you're saying that even after a scandal like Theranos, that drive for success, no matter the cost, is still there.
I think it's still a factor for sure. The pressure to be the next big thing, to disrupt entire industries and make a fortune, it's powerful. And that pressure can create blind spots, even for people with good intentions.
So what can we do as individuals to prevent another Theranos? Is it all on investors and regulators to keep these companies in check, or do we have a role to play?
We absolutely have a role to play. It starts with awareness. We have to stay informed, read critically, and be skeptical of claims that sound too good to be true. Especially when it comes to our health or our money, don't just take someone's word for it. Do your research.
So you're saying we shouldn't just buy into the hype, even if it's coming from a charismatic leader or a company with a seemingly good mission?
Exactly. Ask tough questions, demand transparency, and remember, if something feels wrong, it probably is. And don't underestimate the power of speaking up. If you see something unethical or shady, report it.
So whistleblowers are still essential in keeping things in check.
Absolutely. They often have the best insight into what's really happening inside these companies. But they need protection. That's where strong whistleblower laws and ethical corporate cultures come in.
And what about the role of journalism in all of this? It seems like investigative reporters like John Carreyrou are more important than ever.
Couldn't agree more. Investigative journalism is vital for holding the powerful accountable, especially now with technology changing so rapidly. We need to support independent media and advocate for press freedom if we want to prevent more situations like Theranos.
So awareness, skepticism, supporting a free press, it's all part of the solution.
It is. We also need to ask ourselves some tough questions about the technologies we use and the companies we support. Where are our devices made? What are the ethical implications of the data we share? Are the products and services we use making the world better or just making things worse?
It's about being conscious consumers and citizens, thinking critically about the impact of our choices.
Exactly. And we need to expect more from our leaders and institutions. We need policies that prioritize ethical innovation, that protect whistleblowers, policies that ensure technology benefits everyone, not just a select few.
It seems like we need a shift in thinking to move away from that move fast and break things mentality and embrace a more thoughtful, responsible approach to innovation.
I think you're right. We can't just focus on speed and disruption. We need to prioritize long-term sustainability, social responsibility, and ethics. We have to ask not only can we do this, but should we do this? And what are the potential consequences?
And those questions are crucial in fields like healthcare, where the stakes are so high.
Absolutely. In healthcare, the focus has to be on the patient's well-being, not profit or personal ambition. Theranos is a stark reminder of what happens when we lose sight of that.
This whole deep dive has been incredibly insightful, even if a little unsettling. The Theranos scandal was a wake-up call for Silicon Valley and the tech world, but it remains to be seen if those lessons will stick.
It's an ongoing discussion, and we all need to participate by staying informed, getting involved, and demanding more from our leaders and institutions. We can help create a future where innovation is driven by ethics, responsibility, and a real desire to make the world better.
I think that's a great note to end on. If you want to delve deeper into this captivating story of ambition and deceit, definitely check out John Carreyrou's book, Bad Blood. It's a page-turner that will give you a much deeper understanding of the Theranos saga.
It's a story that will stick with you.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this thought. In a time of rapid technological advancement, what can we do to ensure that innovation is guided by ethical principles and a genuine desire to improve our world?
It's a question worth thinking about, a challenge we all face as we navigate this exciting and sometimes risky world of technology.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Theranos. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.